In his fight to keep his seat in the state Senate, Senator Louis DeLuca is waging war against the Waterbury Police Department. He claims if only police had done something about his granddaughter's alleged abuse, he never would have had to go to an alleged mobster for help. The embattled senator told his side of the story, which at times was emotional, to a legislative committee now investigating him.
Continue to tear my family apart.
With family members crying in the background.
Because I did not and do not have a corrupt relationship with Mr. Galante or anyone else.
Senator Louis DeLuca read from a written statement under oath about why he asked an alleged mobster to rough up his granddaughter's husband.
I know that my granddaughter was being physically abused because I saw the physical wounds and because she told me and others that the wounds were from domestic abuse.
At times, the Republican lawmaker who could be expelled from the Senate was on the verge of tears.
She was being abused even when she was pregnant.
Emotions aside, what lawmakers are really trying to get to the bottom of is DeLuca's dealings with an alleged mobster. How well did he know James Galante? And why did he turn to him for help? DeLuca said while under oath that he went to Galante only after Waterbury's police chief, Neil O'Leary, denied him help, something the chief adamantly denies.
Chief O'Leary did not help when I asked him, because if he had, none of us would be here today.
As for his relationship with Galante, DeLuca admitted Galante contributed to his campaign, but that he never gave him political favors in return.
I understand that I should not have become politically friendly with someone who I believe to be on the fringes of organized crime. It was a mistake to do so.
But will his political peers now investigating him see things the same way? And here now to talk more about DeLuca's decision to testify and his future in the state Senate are WNPR radio reporter Av Harris and Chris Keating, Capitol Bureau Chief for the Hartford Courant. Gentlemen, thanks for being here. It was very interesting to be at the hearing. I'll tell you why, because it really seemed like it was boiling down to DeLuca versus the chief of police for the city of Waterbury. And at one point, Senator Nickerson from Fairfield County had some pretty alarming things. He wanted to know whether or not they should contact the state's attorney. Tell us a little bit about that.
Right, and basically had two diametrically opposed stories. As we just saw, Senator DeLuca says Chief O'Leary didn't help. Chief O'Leary says, Senator DeLuca, I've known him for 30 years. He never mentioned anything about his granddaughter being abused. So what Senator Nickerson said is that I'm just going to throw it out there. It's the L word. Somebody's lying. It's either Senator DeLuca or it's Police Chief O'Leary. And should we refer this to the state's attorneys for a possible perjury investigation?
He didn't sound so. He basically said, though, Senator DeLuca said this under oath, so somebody's lying. He didn't necessarily point fingers at Senator DeLuca.
Well, you got to understand, though, the Chief O'Leary did submit he submitted a letter to the committee. And so you have to weigh what he said in his letter versus Senator DeLuca's testimony. I don't think he was pointing a finger at Chief O'Leary saying he was lying, but between the two stories, there's a pretty sharp and clear difference.
But somebody is lying, and this is Senator DeLuca is a powerful man, and it's kind of hard to believe that if he went to the Waterbury police chief, the Waterbury police chief would not listen to him. But somebody is lying here, but yet we will not hear from the police chief under the rules and regulations set up by this legislative committee. Is that right, Chris?
That's right. That's what it looks like at the moment. There's certain rules, very, very complicated. There's not only rules, but there was a resolution that set up the committee, and basically they set it up so that DeLuca could testify. The only way the chief can testify is if it goes further down the track and they're going to expel DeLuca. At that point, they will expand the inquiry, give it more time, et cetera, and the chief could come in then.
But what are you gauging from folks you're talking to on the committee then? Wouldn't that be a huge question to ask? If somebody's lying, who is it? Is it the chief or is it DeLuca? Let's get the chief in, let's get him under oath and see what he has to say as well.
I think what they're saying is, Senator Rohraback was telling me that basically you're not going to reconcile these two. You have DeLuca under oath saying what he said. You have the chief in a very detailed 3-page letter saying something totally different. You're never going to reconcile between the two.
But if somebody is lying under oath, wouldn't that in itself be a crime?
Again, if somebody lies under oath, it's perjury.
Right.
But again, you have to remember the mandate of this committee is to determine if there's enough evidence to either recommend that Senator DeLuca be expelled from his position, reprimanded, or censured. So I think what Chris is saying is, at this point, they're just trying to see if there's enough of a case to take any action. And if it goes down the road of Senator DeLuca needs to be removed from his Senate seat, at that point, then you probably would see hearings and hear from the chief.
Chief O'Leary was fighting back. He actually was quoted in the Hartford Courant a few days ago. He had this to say. He talked about a fundraiser that apparently he through with Senator DeLuca, apparently helped him raise $10,000 after the fact, after these alleged conversations happened. And Chief O'Leary said this to the Hartford Courant: if what the senator is saying is true, why is it that his people and himself reached out to put a fundraiser together with my name attached to it after I devastated him and his wife, question mark.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that don't seem to make sense here. The grandson-in-law, Mark Colella, who's kind of at the center of this whole thing, 2 years after this whole thing went down with Galante in 2007, he came and got introduced on the floor of the Senate by DeLuca. So there's been just a series of strange things that have happened.
But I guess the bottom line is what's going to happen to DeLuca? What's his future in the Senate? And he gave an emotional testimony about the allegations of abuse. And I know a lot of people in Connecticut. I grew up here. When I talk to folks, they say clearly they can understand the devastation involved if someone you love is being supposedly abused. However, how many of us know alleged mobsters that we can call
Absolutely.
up or meet with and say, hey, help me out?
I think that's the key thing, Shelley, you hit on there, because the thing I took away from that hearing was Senator DeLuca went to the police chief. Whether or not you believe him that Chief O'Leary didn't help him, his next option was not to go to the state police, not to go to federal authorities, not to use any of his connections in state government, which there are many. He went to somebody who he thought was on the fringes of organized crime.
Something he even said during the testimony.
And I
that
think
was
the question is, should somebody who took that kind of action be sitting in the state Senate?
And how rare would this be if some action was taken against DeLuca? They have attorneys on the committee that are researching this, and they say other states have taken action against lawmakers in their states. Do you...
In Connecticut, though, in 400 years in the state Senate, they've never done it. I mean, there's been different inquiries in the House, but in the Senate, there's been none in 400 years.
So are lawmakers, I guess this is asking a question to give your opinion, I can't really do that, but there's been some wondering, is this just a show? Do lawmakers really want to get to the bottom of what happened? Or were they put between a rock and a hard place?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult. That it's, these are some of Senator DeLuca's colleagues on the Republican caucus. It's uncharted waters for them. But I think that the key phrase that they've been saying is they have to protect the integrity of the institution. And I think the very precedents that they're setting, for instance, letting Senator DeLuca answer questions not under oath, that could prove very influential down the road if another inquiry like this is ever set up again.
That was all about that. Senator DeLuca read from a written statement under oath, but then refused to answer questions under oath. I don't know. They debated it for like 4 hours. I was ready to fall asleep in that hearing. It was brutal. But Chris, what's the bottom line? That they have a few more weeks to get the job done, but they probably will ask for another extension?
Yes, they did, and they'll probably get it. It's the approximate time frame now is around November 12th. They did ask for an extension, another 15 days, which would run you out to about November 12th.
Gauging from what you're hearing from the folks on the committee, from your sources, what do you think is going to happen? What are you hearing, I should say, is going to happen? Do you think it's going to be...
Supposedly they are going to finish the work by November 12th. No one's really tipping their hand, at least the people on the committee. There's people outside and people who aren't involved. They have a lot of speculation, but no one on the committee is saying.
I think that the fact that they allowed the senator to answer questions in person, not being under oath, may indicate that they aren't really prepared to move to expel him, but maybe some kind of censure or some kind of reprimand.
All right. Chris, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.